Hi, I'm Gary White for Central Kentucky Television. I'm here with Lebanon Mayor Gary Crenshaw for an update on what's going on with the city of Lebanon. We have a meeting coming up. Actually, we're taping this on Veterans Day, November the 11th. You have a meeting this evening,
yes,
right, for the regular monthly meeting. But there's some stuff going on that we want to talk about. One thing, too, that we want to make the city residents aware of is that you're going to be smoke testing the sewer lines in the area.
Yes, we are. We, over a period of time, we have recognized that there is a lot of water drainage into our sewer system that really shouldn't be coming in there, and it's causing it's adding to the problem of stormwater backup in the town, in the community. And so what we're doing, we're smoke testing lines, and what that does is we'll put some smoke into the line. If there's any leaks anywhere, of course that smoke will show up. And that'll indicate whether there's a problem in that line or in the line to the house. Mm-hmm. And there shouldn't be any smoke in anybody's house. And if there should happen to be, then that's an indication that maybe there's some gases coming into the house also that shouldn't be there. And so if there is anybody that has a respiratory problem or is immobile or anything like that, and we get ready to start testing, if you would, call City Hall, and we'll make arrangements to take care of that. But this is part of our ongoing process to deal with the acute stormwater backup in downtown Lebanon.
So is this something you've done in the past, or is this something new?
We've done it sporadically in the past, but the way we're doing it now is a comprehensive testing of all the lines that we can encounter.
Now, it says here, too, that if you may want to put some water into your line, for that, will they be notified prior to the testing, the residents?
I'm not sure. Mr. Thompson is in charge of that.
Okay. Building inspector.
Yeah, the building inspector. I would assume that they will be,
right,
but I can find out more a little bit later. But
or if you have a question, you can call the City Hall.
Yeah, and the importance of putting some water in any drains is that over time your drains in the house will dry up. And when that happens, that allows gases or anything else in the lines to backfill and come up in the house. You always really should keep some water in those drains. A lot of times people will call us about odors in their basement. And most of the time it's because they've got a dry drain down there. And if they would put some water in it, and that would resolve that problem. But prior to the testing, you should put some water in the drain.
And if you do, as the mayor had mentioned, have a respiratory problem or are immobile, you're asked to contact City Hall at 270-692-6272 or the police department at 270-692-2121 prior to the testing, so they can be aware of that as well. Now, this is going in conjunction with the flooding issue that has occurred down on Spaulding Avenue. Is that correct?
Right. We have looked back as best as we can determine, and everybody's memories gets just a little bit hazy over time with regard to what's going on. But we had a problem. It's been about 12 years ago where that in that year we had 3 or 4 rain incidents that flooded, particularly south Spaulding. Mm-hmm. And we took some measures after that. We put in some larger grates and some things like that. And we didn't have the problem for a few years. Then year before last, we once again had a problem. Last year we had 2 or 3 incidents. And this year we've had 3 incidents, and maybe 4 depending on where you're at. The first incident was the flood that everybody remembers that turned Main Street into a river. Right. And I discount that one because that was one of those events that there's nothing you could do.
There's a tremendous amount of water.
Yeah. Now the other events are quite a concern to us. And so we've had an engineering firm down here 2 or 3 times. They have walked the water system and met with a lot of residents, met with a lot of building owners and shopkeepers, trying to get a handle on what their perspective is and the factual things that went on during the floods. About 3 weeks ago, and maybe a month ago, we had a meeting downtown with those engineers, with Mr. Tincher, who is the secretary to the highway cabinet, and with Ms. Dunaway, who is the chief engineer for this district. And we talked about funding, we talked about different solutions, we talked about a lot of things that day. And as a result of that, we've gone out and tried to find funding sources for not only the scope of study, the study itself, to determine if the Jordan, which is the main line through the city, the Jordan Creek, what the issues with that is. And that includes aerial surveys, it includes land surveys, digital mapping. The cost for that's over $100,000. And that's $100,000 that we didn't have in our budget. With that being said, we're going to try to find the money to do a scope of study, and I think we're close to that in some ways, and I feel like even if the city has to borrow the money to get that done, I don't think anybody would plan on digging up their yard or making house repairs or taking your car to a mechanic without first trying to figure out what the problems are so that you can address the issues.
Right.
And without understanding what the flood patterns are down on the Jordan Creek and how much capacity that it has and where all the water is coming from, we could never hope to resolve the problem. We could spend millions of dollars and the next rain that comes along have another flood. So it's important that we do that study, that we find out what the issues are, and it's a long-term issue, and we've asked the engineering company to give us some short-term solutions, and part of that is that we may be looking at some flood doors to go on certain businesses that in cooperation with the city, the business and the city could pay for those doors together. But first we need to get the study done and get that under contract, which I'm hoping that we'll do that tonight.
Okay. So there'll be discussion at the meeting this evening.
Yes, be a lot of it.
On it. It's a large
As it should be. As it should be.
So if the funding does go through, or is approved for pursuing tonight, how long before the survey and all that can be conducted?
Actually, they've already done some preliminary work.
Okay.
But I would think that with winter coming on and everything, it would be next spring before we'd have any results on the larger issues. Now, with regard to some temporary solutions, I think we would be much closer than that.
Okay. All right. Also, recently, the city and the county had a joint meeting regarding E911. And what was your feedback on that meeting?
It was a very productive meeting. It was very informative. We had people here from Windstream, and we had people here from the vendor in Lexington who we're going to cooperate with. What the system involves is that there's going to be a central system out of Fayette County. And there are many counties like Marion County that's going to tie into that system. And then our dispatch service here will be part of that larger system. By bringing together several different counties, it cuts the cost down. We can never afford, I don't want to say never, but it would be almost impossible for us to afford this next generation of E911 without doing it cooperatively. At the same time, there's a lot of equipment that we have to buy. We're probably going to have to hire one more dispatch officer. And but the meeting was very informative. I think we're very close to having an enhanced 911 system. As always, the split of the money is a huge discussion topic. But frankly, the judge and I in fiscal court and the city council has laid all that aside, and we've tried to move on in anticipation that we're going to do it. We're going to have to figure out what the money split, what the cost is going to be for each organization. But I'm confident that we'll reach a solution on that.
Okay.
So I would think by May or April, we would be ready to do some testing on the system.
Oh, super. Great. All right. Now, also, you are having some blacktop being done with the city, correct?
We every year, the tax money that comes off the gasoline tax, there's a portion of it comes back to each county and to each city. And we get back normally about $100,000, and that's what we use to do our blacktopping and even sidewalks we can do. And we've got about $100,000 in reserve. We received another $100,000 plus or minus, but because the blacktop vendor has been working on the Bluegrass Parkway and all their other obligations, I doubt very seriously that we'll get any blacktopping done in the fall season of fiscal year 14, which is what we're in. So,
It's
but
getting kind of late for that possibility, right?
yeah, because they stopped making hot mix, which is what you make the blacktop out of.
Right.
They stopped making that. There's a shut-off date in November that they. So it's pretty obvious to us we're not going to get any blacktopping done this fall, but we do anticipate, and they have told us that they will be ready for us in the spring. And not only that, but we've received a great deal of positive feedback from the state with regard to our issues on the flooding. And we have asked for some money from the state with regard to that. Unfortunately, the definition of how those monies can be used probably restricts it from doing anything with our scope of study. But the state has said that they will try to help us in other areas with regard to our streets. And haven't promised anything, but they've been very, very cooperative, and so I'm looking forward to maybe a little added blacktop money or something of that this coming year.
So in the spring it's going to be busy. We're going to have all the roads being blacktopped, have E911 going, and hopefully have the flooding situation figured out.
Now I don't want everybody to think we're going to blacktop every road, but no, we have a list of about 8 or 9 streets, and that's what we try to do every year.
Right.
With that said, this year there's a few streets that, for instance, Woodlawn Avenue, that's a huge project, costs a lot of money, but it needs to be done. And one of the goals that we had this year was to put a sidewalk all the way down Woodlawn Avenue. And because of the other projects that we've had, we didn't get around to it. And maybe that's a good thing, because I understand the water company has some work that they need to do on Woodlawn as well before we get too involved over there. So if not this spring, certainly want to see the sidewalks put in on Woodlawn Avenue and maybe have it resurfaced. But there's about 8, 9, maybe 12 streets in the community that we try to do every year, and maybe a little bit more this spring.